What's up, everybody? TI Trading was here, coming at you guys with another video. This is going to be kind of a quick video. I just wanted to give people an overview. I've teased this chart a little bit. I'm going to add this probably in the chart layout section just because I like this chart layout so much. So wanted to go over the breakdown of this chart layout. So the first thing is both charts have the same indicators. So I just keep NQ up here, I keep ES down here. The reason why I do this is because confluence inside of it, seeing what ES is doing and seeing what NQ is doing. But first off, we have the Q Pro, right? The main things that I have turned on is the Q wave. These are my Q wave settings here. So you can pause it and do that. And then the other thing that I have turned on is the Q cloud, and you can pause it, but everything's just set to 100 for the period. The next thing is I have the trend line pivot by QuantVue. I have support and resistant levels by QuantVue, and then I have the Coalfield VWAP, and my VWAP settings are kind of turned on like this. So you can see that I have the multiple deviation 1 and 2 on, and yeah, so and I didn't change anything with these with the trend line and the support and resistance. Nothing's changed there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hide that now so we can kind of see what the charts look like. So first off, I guess we will go from top to bottom. So Q Pro, I guess let's turn each one of them on and off so we can see what each one's doing. And I'll just go over it on NQ just to get through what the indicators are doing. So first off, I have let's see, we have Q cloud turned on and we have Q wave turned on, right? So the Q wave is these gray lines here, right? And these are just typical settings that I really like to trade with, right? A lot of times we have these midline bounces that happen where we come up and we come down right off the midline. A lot of times we will go from the top band to the lower band, or the top band to the mid band. You can see that right here as well, mid band to the top band to the mid band. And so it's just one of those things that I like to see. The other thing is, like, a lot of times when we pull outside of one of these bands, it will want to pull back in a lot of times. And that's not 100%, but especially on bigger moves. So the other thing I have is the Q cloud. And if I made the Q cloud into what I call the worm. And it's just this 100 it's just this, let's just call it a moving average, and where it just kind of just changes color, right? I call it the worm because I like that term, and you can kind of see, how this plays out throughout the day, right? So, a lot of the times what I'd be looking for, or what I have found, is like if we pull outside this band, right, and we're pulling back in, right, you can see later on in the day how we pull out of the band right here, and we come back up, but the worm hasn't changed, right? But when we pull out the band and the worm does change, and it flips over, right, you can see, if you would have taken a long right here, how that would have just played in your favor, right? But how it doesn't play out in your favor here. So this is kind of the simple concept behind it. It's not the only confluence that I'm using, and I also like to use this on electric hours as well, not regular hours. But I have it set on regular hours so I can show you how the next couple indicators print. Trend lines and pivots will give you these lines here, right? Which is just giving you kind of a trend line. And you can see when that trend line is broken, right? And so, you're potentially looking for an entry. Sometimes they're not perfect, right? So, I mean, theoretically, this trend line would kind of be drawn out to like here, right? And so we kind of broke above it, but we came right back down. And so on this next one, though, that would be a very, very, very valid entry. And the other thing, you could wait for that retest of that same level. But You know, you can see how we have like this little trend line down coming down. We have a nice little trend line coming up. So then you're looking at for a potential breakout of this level, right? And which we do get, and then we consolidate and we continue going higher. You can kind of see how these trend lines, you know, draw themselves, right? And I just can be extremely useful. I have found them very, very useful, especially when you're using them in on ES and NQ at the same time. The next is going to be support and resistance, default settings. So you can see how support and resistance works, right? And just recent swing high, recent swing lows, and draws lines. Not super rocket science, right? But it can help you identify like channels, right? And potential breakouts, right? So if we zoom out here, let's zoom in on today, right? So I would say like this is kind of consolidation. We kind of had this move lower to higher. We have this whole range of consolidation, right? And you can see this nice level kind of being formed right here, right? And so once we break this level here, that is a good, very, very valid short, right? And you can kind of see once we start to come up, there's not really very much resistance up here, right? Potentially at this level where we had this previous support could turn into resistance, which is kind of the exact level that we see turn into resistance right here, right? Again, we have now resistance, now we have support. Now, potentially, I'm looking to take a trade once we break out of this resistance here, right? And so that's kind of what I'm looking for when I'm looking at support and resistance. I'm not necessarily a lot of times taking trades off the supports or off the resistance, but I'm looking for those breakouts of those levels to trade. And then we have the VWAPs and the VWAP deviation. Now it's probably hard to see depending on your monitor, but see there's this gray band right here, right? And the gray band up here, right? So VWAP deviation. So this our line is VWAP deviation. 1 is going to be this first edge, and deviation 2 is going to be the second edge, right? And there's different ways of trading this, but you can see that it's a lot of times on that first deviation we can form a support. You can see right here on first deviation we formed a resistance right there, formed a support on that deviation. So deviation on VWAP is important to look at. The other important thing to know is like whenever we come outside of deviation, right, it likes to at least pull back to the the 2 deviation, right? So that's kind of like an expected target there. And so, you know, anytime that we come out of deviation, right, you can kind of always expect some type of pullback into the 2 deviation level. So if I scroll back and find another spot where we come outside of deviation right here, we came out of the second deviation, right? And we eventually come back into that second deviation. Now, this gets a little bit hard because it's like we didn't really have that pullback yet, right? So you kind of want to wait for some type of other added confluence that we're breaking this downtrend before initiating that trade. But there's probably better examples you can see where we pull outside of that second deviation and we pull back into it. This tends to happen a lot. It's very rare that we would stay outside of second deviation for long periods of time. It does happen, but it's kind of rare. So that's kind of how you would go about trading that. Now, once you put all of these combined together, it gives you some really nice, clean potential setups, right? Now you have VWAP right here. You could be taking VWAP bounces, right? Potentially. You can see that we have formed a resistance up near this VWAP level, right? But you can see also that we've gone through the VWAP a couple times, right? We had this little bit of a downtrend. We come back up to VWAP, fail, come back up to VWAP, kind of potentially might close above it, but we start to kind of flip over. You can see the 100, the worm, right, flip over. You know, potentially looking for shorts now that we've closed below the VWAP here, right? We closed below the VWAP. We have a flip here, right? But this is again getting to the support and resistance levels that we're looking at, right? From back here, even we're looking at that whole level, right? And so, I'm looking to trade the breakout, right? Could potentially, if you took this breakout and you got stopped out, right? And we broke out on the bottom side of it, this would still be a valid trade. The idea behind trading isn't to be right 100% of the times, but it's to be right majority of the time, or at least have your profits way bigger than your losers. So, um, you know, a lot of times too, it's like I'm looking for these trend lines to break, right? And so, for example, back here today, we had this nice like little trend line like this, right? We had another trend line that was like this, right? And so once I see us up near this top band and this trend line has been broken, right? And we show weakness, now I'm potentially looking for shorts. Now I'm looking for confirmation of that short. I'm looking for this to flip over, right? But the other thing that's even more important, right, is using the ES chart as some type of confluence, right? And so this is my ES chart down here. And I like the ES chart a lot. I think I need to work on it probably a little bit more than the NQ chart. But you can kind of see, again, ES I feel like makes a lot more cleaner moves sometimes, right? So you can see once we form this high, we come lower, right? You can see, look at the worm, look how like solid when it flips on ES, like how it just stays like that until this level right here, right? Um, I feel like a lot of times when we're up in these upper bands or these lower bands and you get this worm flip, it's very valid trades. And the other thing that I want to see and know where it is going to be the VWAP on here, right? So, seeing this as a potential VWAP play here, and being able to trade that to that mid band, and then also looking up here at the NQ chart to see is there confluence on that trade. So we scroll over to today, right? Again, you can see how beautiful this setup was on ES, especially coming down. And then once we start to come back up, right, and we have the worm flip kind of on ES and NQ at the same time, that's when I'm like really interested in this play, right? Again, we're outside of the standard deviation on both, right? I'm expecting a push back into deviation at least, right? And so you could have a nice quick scalp, very low risk. And again, looking for trend line breaks, looking for support and resistant breaks, looking for VWAP, looking for midline bounces. And so combining all these into one. So I call this the Power Ringo chart. I'll probably continue working on it a little bit as I play with it a little bit more. But I have been very profitable with this trading setup. And I want to give it to the community to see if other people like it, and if anybody else has success with it, and kind of see if anybody makes changes to it. So if you haven't already, like, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.